Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory. And we're live on Parental Advisory today. Anthony, you know what we're talking about today?
Claudine,
Anthony, we're talking about PLRs. Do you know what that means?
I do know what that means. I do, and that's a loaded question. I do know what it means.
It's a private letter ruling.
Yes.
And so, my research, I like to find out what it means.
Wait. Your research was to make this sexy.
Yeah.
Because no one really wants to talk about
private
letter rulings. So how much sexy were you able to add to this?
Well, you know what I found I was able to do is simplify.
Okay.
Which can be sexy.
Sure.
Okay, I'm blonde.
All right.
I like to make things easy to understand.
That's helpful.
Okay, so the basic definition of a PLR is a written statement. Do you want to, you know what? Let's make this sexy.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
A PLR.
Oh, how do I get one?
It's you may want one. It's a written statement issued to a taxpayer that interprets and applies tax laws to the taxpayer's represented set of facts. A PLR is issued in response to a written request submitted by a taxpayer. A PLR may not be relied on as a precedent by other taxpayers or by IRS personnel. You know it's not sexy? You got to pay a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
That's where it loses its
There's
sexiness.
not. And also, you did say the IRS does have a super handy guide.
They do.
When you're requesting a PLR.
I thought, what if I wanted to request a PLR?
Okay.
I'm a taxpayer.
Right.
I might have an issue.
Right.
So I went on and looked up some information, and I stumbled upon IRS.gov, which is a really, really fantastic website.
Or
lots of information.
Our friend Eric at IRS calls it irs.gov.
.gov.
Very important.
irs.gov. I found a super easy guide, 252-page document that gives you really great step-by-step instructions on how to file a PLR.
How to file a PLR. Now, if you could get
252 pages.
Can I get a PLR, and do I need to read all 252 pages? Can you tell me that?
I read a lot of them, and I still couldn't tell you how to file a PLR.
Okay.
Very, very
So it's
difficult.
something that tax attorneys do. Mm-hmm. It is something that we do. And as crazy as it is, there's a lot of times it makes sense. For the typical taxpayer, it's something they never hear about, but it's really for people who are involved in business and also taking aggressive tax stances. It's when it comes into play.
Okay.
There is, because here's, as we talked yesterday about why everybody should be audited. And the way audits work is that you could be doing the wrong thing, with air quotes, for many years, and you're not going to find out you're doing the wrong thing for years down the roads. And now let's multiply all the years you're doing something incorrectly, according to the IRS. And so you're multiplying the error by a lot. The thing is, maybe this is something you really want to do, though. It's really going to save you a lot of money, but you want some sort of certainty on how the IRS is going to treat this.
Okay.
And really, and that sort of goes to show you how much taxes become the most important decision-making process when somebody is looking for an investment. And, I was talking to Julia earlier this morning about why I wasn't hot on rental real estate. Because everyone knows there's tax savings in there. If it's taxed at a lower rate, you get your depreciation. However, we also happen to know there's so much foreign money that goes into U.S. Real estate that it's a little inflated because it's the easy tax savings that everyone goes for. Well, that right there says, you know what? I don't like this entire investment because it's what everyone's going into because it's easy to figure out. And hey, look, there's a building. You can see it. I figure it out. So to me, that's like, well, I want to stay away from that. And I'd look for some other sort of tax saving mechanism. But a lot of things are a lot more complicated than rental real estate. And I'm sure we've never written one, but I'm sure there would be an instance where someone would ask for a PLR on some sort of treatment of rental real estate as well. I just confused myself.
Well, so let's say, you have a great idea and you want to make sure you're doing it properly. You can get a PLR from the IRS saying, yes, this is legal and we accept whatever you're proposing, or no, if we ever got a tax return and we saw this, you'd be in big trouble. But it's really not that simple. 252 pages later, you find out. And now the cost, well, we'll talk about the cost later. That sort of blew my mind. What I thought was funny, and this goes back to one of our past podcasts about Irwin Schiff, fantastic fantastic guy who really was one of the original American tax, well, not the original, but
modern day.
Tax protester. Tried to do a lot for us. He really had some great ideas. And what I found interesting in the 252 pages was they had a whole section that was dedicated to something the IRS calls a no ruling topic. Okay, the IRS will not issue a letter, ruling, or determination letter on what they call frivolous issues. So let's give some examples of those frivolous issues. Frivolous constitutional claims, such as claims that the requirements to file tax returns and pay taxes constitutes an unreasonable search barred by the Fourth Amendment, Fifth and 14th Amendment, and 13th Amendment. Oh, and also the 16th Amendment. So all the hard work that a lot of tax protesters have done, the IRS says, you know what? Don't bother us with those, which we talked about yesterday. If they're so wrong, shouldn't there be just a canned response? Like, here's a reason why your argument is invalid?
Right. I mean, there's a lot that enrages me as you're reading that, because I'm assuming that's not you who put the constitutional in quotes.
Right.
That is absolutely infuriating. And the IRS has published a whole list of why tax protester arguments fail. And if you take the time to read them, as I have, you get to this thing where it just basically is a circular logic. Mm-hmm. Well, the courts have ruled it unconstitutional.
Yes.
And then you read the court opinion, this is frivolous. Okay, but why?
Because it's unconstitutional.
Because it's unconstitutional. Yeah, there's no merit to the claim.
Nope.
It's frivolous. And the reasoning argues back to, well, there's no merit to the claim. It's frivolous. There's no merit to the claim. At no point do they actually tell you why it's frivolous. It's a tautology. It's so infuriating. If these claims lack so much merit, why is it hard to say anything but frivolous?
Right.
Say, oh no, that's actually not why it was passed. This is what this is the context of what this word means, and this is what this means.
Right.
You have a real hard problem. I mean, you have a problem when you're intellectually honest to tell me why it doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment. Please, if you're going to say it doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment, tell me why. Just tell me why it's okay that any IRS auditor can go through your stuff for no reason whatsoever, have complete access to your financial affairs. Just tell me why. Mm-hmm. And tell me why, we have the 9th and 10th Amendment are ignored. They say there's limited powers that the IRS, that the government has, and that there are more rights than that are listed in the Bill of Rights. So tell me why that is unenforceable. And there's just sort of a laziness. And, the courts never can understand their own bias. Mm-mm. That's not the way it is. They are always, the judges are on the side of truth and justice. The side of truth and justice is whatever they decide is truth and justice. Mm-hmm. It's sort of just, again, circular.
It is. And the IRS are the wordiest mofos. And yet their reason is because we said so.
There is a quote I read in Confessions of a Radical Tax Protester. Larry, his last name is escaping me. He's a really well-known trader. I have the book upstairs. He had a quote in there. He said something, there's an African saying, corn can't expect justice from chickens.
Oh, wow.
And there you go, right there. Mm-hmm. That is the entirety of why the federal courts are always going to side with the government.
Right.
They're the government.
Yep. So some other frivolous issues, other things that Irwin Schiff had tried to fight for, claims that income taxes are voluntary, that the term income is not defined in the IRS, claims the tax may be imposed only on coins minted under a gold or silver standard. My favorite is at the bottom, other claims that the courts have characterized as frivolous or groundless. So anything we didn't list that you may think of that we don't agree with, that we just want to call frivolous. So there. There
it is. Don't bring it up. Which, I mean, this seems like the place to bring it up.
Yeah.
Like, hey, before you guys have to get all indicty, this is what I want to argue, then you can tell me. And you know what? This is one of the things I've noticed. We've represented people who have made tax protesters arguments, and I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not going to tell you that there's going to be some good result for you if you do it. Mm-hmm. They'll send letters to the IRS. Because the IRS will send a notice to them. And if you look through the record, they'll say, well, tell me why they're going to raise a tax protester argument, mail it to the IRS, and the IRS doesn't respond. So then that the person takes that as like, well, look, the IRS sends me a letter, it's operative. Why is it when I send them a letter back, they don't have to respond and they could just ignore it? Mm-hmm. And so this seems like a perfect opportunity for someone to help educate a taxpayer who's going to pay the program fee. They have to pay the program fee. So you can't take a little bit out of your time. And I mean, if it's so obvious that it's nonsense, why is it so hard to say anything but frivolous? And it's Larry R. Williams,
thank you.
Confessions of a Radical Tax Processor. Great book. I mean, I read this in 2 nights. Really well written, and it's his story. He's a really well-known trader, really successful trader. He has a big following, and he just stopped sort of paying taxes. And he was extradited from Australia. So he had the time of his life. He kind of got off because he ended up not owing money. He lucked out a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah, he ended up when they actually did his returns for the years that they were trying to get him for. He actually was able to skirt. He got out real lucky.
Oh, so I'd like to read that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. I recommend it to anybody. It's a terrific amount of fun, and it turns out okay.
All right, so I'm going to talk in a little while about the cost. We'll touch on that. So it seems right now like the IRS is not making this the easiest process. 252-page document on how to file costs a lot of money. So my question to you is, why bother with a PLR? Why not just roll the dice and see if what you're doing is legal or not? Take a chance.
Well, I mean, there it is. I mean, that's exactly what you should go through. And the thing is that, but if you gamble, you have to look at what your exposure is. That, you're talking about some things where you could have a tax treatment where that you're able to defer income, or something might be completely taxable. Mm-hmm. And so that you could just be off by a factor of 39.6%.
It's a bit to owe.
Times all the years they get you for. So now you're talking about, you multiply by 3 times. That's more than what the asset value could be.
Mm-hmm. Plus penalties, perhaps?
Exactly. So plus penalties. And so some things where you're going for an aggressive move, mm-hmm. that it's really something where you want to do because everything can be at risk. You could be completely exposed. And also when you have other investors aboard who are going to have their own team to say, well, I'm going to do my due diligence. You're saying that this is going to be a legitimate tax shelter, mm-hmm. or tax avoidance. I can't allow my client to. I can't allow my client or some trust funds to be put into this, knowing that I'm going to lose my job.
Right.
I can't do this. And look, it sounds great, but no, thank you. I can't risk everything, and that's really what you're doing in some cases. You're risking everything because your tax move is so aggressive, and it could be so wonderful. It really could be. Mm-hmm. But, do you really want to wait until an audit that's not going to happen for another 3 years?
Right. So it may be worth it.
Yeah.
We want to look at both sides of the coin today. So after the first break here, we want to touch on why you may not want to request a PLR, some reasons why it may not be the best idea. We'll talk about that right after. Anthony, tell me about your recurring nightmare.
It's that nightmare where you're yelling, but no words are coming out of your mouth.
I have a similar nightmare where I'm in an emergency. I need to dial 911 and my phone won't work.
That sounds terrifying.
It is. And I think I know why we have these dreams.
Why is that?
The problem with the IRS isn't just the IRS. The problem is that people don't see the IRS for the horrible risk it presents.
I think you're right. We spend so much of our time trying to warn people about the IRS, but sometimes I wonder if our words go unheeded.
But the IRS can be dealt with the right team and the right preparation.
Can IRSMedic be the right team for someone with an IRS problem?
Yes, but only if they see the IRS as a problem.
IRSMedic, the law offices of Parental, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.
And we're back live on Parental Advisory talking about PLRs, or private letter rulings, which we're trying to simplify. And what we want to do is we want to give the pros and the cons. So the first thing we'll touch on is why you may not want to request PLR. And the first thing that caught my eye was the cost. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe a couple $100, mm-hmm. but no.
Well, it could be.
Yeah.
Well, but the price goes up.
Depending on
depending on
what?
Yeah, but depending on what type of program you're going under.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But as high as
$50,000.
Holy
dollars.
God.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a really good tax idea that's worth an investment of $50,000.
Yeah, and there's
some are.
Right, and there's times where it makes sense. That's a bargain. And then, that's just the IRS fee, but there's tax attorneys out there who are also going to charge you money for this.
Well, I think, and it's one of those things where I would guess it's worth it because it looked like there's a lot of time and skill involved. 252-page document on IRS.gov that didn't make any sense at all. So if you hire an attorney, which you probably should do if you want to do it right, they have specialists, right? So people that understand PLRs and how to do it, the correct way to do it. Because I'm assuming if you don't do it correctly,
you're wasting time. I mean, if you're not doing a PLR correctly, you've just wasted time and you've given something that offers no protection. If you're misstating the facts, if you're misstating relevant facts, stating them in a way that isn't quite the best way to state them, you can get a ruling you don't like. Or what if you get the ruling you don't like, but you misstated the relevant fact, and so you might have been right if you did it differently, but now they're looking like, no, that's what you said at all. We don't like what you did. This was a little sleazy. We're going to disregard it, and now we're going to hit you with everything that you didn't want to happen.
Wow, that stinks. So you could actually apply for one, think you're doing it correctly, and then still get
if you're misstating relevant facts, and if you that legal. In order to persuade someone legally, you always get them on the facts, and the law is always backfilled in to go to people's conclusions. I've done this enough. I know how everyone making decisions likes to pretend they're these objective people who don't have bias, right?
Right, no bias.
I don't have bias. I know. I have no bias. That's how I know, because that's me. That's me. But everybody has bias. Everybody has bias, and in court, it's more the personality of the judge. The law doesn't matter. And you know what? The published rules they go out the door. First of all, that's not how we do it here, kid. That's just the way it is. And when you're writing something to get a ruling to go your way, you have to frame things a certain way. And there's just a right way and a wrong way to do it. And I think, to doing the right way is, kind of like, that's why they call it the practice of law.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to learn words to use and to make sure that you're going to get something that sticks.
Make sure you speak IRS.
Something that they can go with, that they can follow along. And if you're going to confuse somebody too, don't expect them to rule in your favor. If they can't understand you, they are not going to, here's this thing I don't understand. Yes, I approve it.
It's like trying to out IRS the IRS.
They're not going to work
them so badly.
You have to make it. You have to break it down in a way they can simple on those relevant facts.
Yep. The next thing that seems like it could be pretty frustrating is the time to get a response, which doesn't surprise me.
Right.
I mean, it's the IRS. The average amount of time to get a ruling is about 2 months after the request is received. And that's only if only one branch of the IRS is involved. When there's multiple branches, it could be 3 months or longer, necessitating the involvement of those multiple branches. And I love that you said hope for no government shutdowns.
Right, they do happen though. I mean, God, it always, the government shutdowns never help us out because we have clients, when a levy gets issued, I remember that was 2 years ago, we had a government shutdown and the IRS issued a bunch of levies and then they took a break. And we were trying to get them off for the taxpayer. And then there was a skeleton crew. There was actually, the IRS wasn't shut down completely. There were a few people, and you had to know the secret phone numbers to find the people. So, I mean, just talk about complete unfairness. We were able to get through and get things done, but we had knowledge that taxpayers just couldn't get.
Right.
And that's kind of disgusting.
All right. So next we talk about facts present you wish you weren't. Like what?
Facts present you weren't present. This goes to coloring the transaction. There's facts that aren't really bad, but they look bad.
Okay, that makes sense. And this touches on, I'm going to skip ahead one, privacy. All private letter rulings are not private. I thought that was awesome. Every PLR or private letter ruling is public record.
And that's where you can do a lot of research. Something that we'll do instead of going and asking for a private letter ruling, which we're going to be bound by, because now it's like you're kind of bound by it. So if you go against that after you were told no, Ooh, boy. One of these things where you might be better off asking for forgiveness than permission.
Mm-hmm. But
So you would go to research to say, okay, here's a private letter ruling. And the IRS says you can't use this as precedent in your case. But you're getting an idea to say, well, we just didn't invent this, though. So when you're going to apply penalties or something, I know we couldn't use this as precedent, but we were under a time crunch. We had to get it done. We did the best based on these other rulings, these private letter rulings. Based on that, we thought this was a legitimate way to go if you're ever, if you do have a problem with it later. So sometimes you just say, we'll go with someone else's decision instead.
And I was able to find all of these PLRs very quickly and easily on IRS.gov. Every one that they've done with details, they take out names, pertinent information like that.
Do they take out Social Security numbers?
All except the last 4. Not enough facts known. A taxpayer may decide against requesting a ruling if the facts of the transaction may differ material from the facts described in the ruling request. So it may just not work.
Right. You just don't have enough information at the time you want to get this done. And there are things that are moving. And now, because what's the point of asking for a PLR when the facts are going to change or may change and by the time you get the answer? And then they changed. Let's say that you get a PLR back that says, no, we don't like that tax treatment. That's not good. The IRS says that's not good. And then you go ahead and do it anyway. And then they say, hey, we told you not to do that. We weren't going to allow that. You're like, yeah. But those were the facts as I thought they were going to be, but this is how they really are. And you can kind of see how you would have an uphill battle. They're like, well, I think you're trying to pull a fast one there, Mr. Taxpayer.
Yep. And then the last sort of con to PLRs is there's some issues the IRS won't even make any rulings on. And if you fall under one of those, which were pretty sort of, let me see if I can find the link quickly. The IRS won't make any rulings on them. Current no rulings list, they were pretty odd. And something about general contracting. I mean, there just seems like there's things they won't touch. So does that mean, do you pay your fee and ask for the PLR and they keep the money? How does that work?
No, I think it just goes back to you.
It just goes
back to say, no, this is not one where we're going to make a decision.
So that's another good instance of contacting an attorney, because you don't want to waste your time trying to say you want to do this on your own, a PLR, and then you find out it's something.
I don't think anyone really. I don't think there's many people who do this on their own.
No.
No. It's not. There's a team involved. There's really a team. These are really complicated issues, and you're talking about, typically millions of dollars at stake.
Right.
Typically.
I mean, if you're going to invest $50,000 in the IRS getting back to you, it's
that's
got to be
not
worth
really,
it.
You're going to be going, for that amount, you're going to be doing something off the shelf. This is really for things that are unique, deals, some interesting deals where there's many moving parts, and something where there just isn't a lot. There's so many things have been decided for the average taxpayer, but because the tax code is so complicated and there is so many moving parts, especially when we talk about things in an international setting, there's hypotheticals no one really could invent. Well, what about this case?
I feel like sometimes they must get them and they sit around with like 8 people and they're like, Bob, you think we should let this guy do this? I don't know, Joe, that one looks like,
there's a dartboard to
yeah.
say
Yes or no.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be fun.
Yeah, he paid us $50,000. Let's
$50,000. Yeah.
Let's say no, just to be jerks.
Well, I mean, I guess if they always say no, then that's less people that are going to request them. That means their job security is sort of at stake. So you got to allow some of them through, right? Sure. I'm just thinking, from a practical standpoint, just the way human nature is who wants to make themselves obsolete.
Yeah.
Like, way to go. You denied everything. Guess what? No one's requesting them anymore.
I just picture them sitting around like madmen with drinks and cigarettes. This one, let's do yes on that one. That guy seems pretty.
Or they're Googling the names. Like, oh, yeah, look at
his
definitely.
Facebook page. He's got a hot wife.
Yeah. I want to impress her. I want her to like me.
All right. So now we talked about the cons. Quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the advantages of requesting a PLR.
Claudine, how would you explain the IRS to an enemy?
I would say the IRS is about truth and justice and fairness.
Now, how would you explain the IRS to a friend?
In that case, I would say the IRS is like calm waters with sharks swimming right below the surface.
Can you see the sharks?
You might.
Can you feel the sharks?
They do tend to bite.
Now, let's say you wanted to go into the water. Could you safely go into the water with the sharks in the water as well?
You could safely do it with a shark cage, say.
Now, could IRSMedic be your IRS shark cage?
It's what we do best.
IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.
I wonder if you should spike your Facebook profile when you're doing this with like, you show your wife like being a little tax nerd, like you put her like little glasses or something like that, and give her like a whole little bookish thing, and the IRS PLR employee will look at it like, oh boy, I want to impress her. I could tell she's really going to read this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's approve that PLR. PLR private letter ruling. And we talked about the cons of requesting a PLR, but there are obviously advantages.
That's
and the
right.
largest is making sure you're doing something correctly.
That's right. The expectation interest is something that's a real interest. In life, people always can take bad news in a way. What people detest is being told one thing and it being the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, a child saying, it's time to go to bed now. You're going to get resistance. And so the trick is, hey, 10 minutes, we're going to have to turn it off.
Right.
I mean, that works.
Yes, it does.
I mean, that works.
5 minutes. I give 5 minutes, 2 minutes,
Yep.
30 seconds.
You kind of want to just guide people along that way so they're not surprised. And that's really what it's about. Everyone hates surprises. Maybe a few people like, but most times people hate them. There's some people who hate surprise birthday parties.
That would be me.
You do?
Yes.
Have you ever had? Did we ever do one for you?
Yes.
I wasn't
Kevin, no,
invited.
you weren't. Kevin it was a very small party.
Okay.
And then I
All
did
right,
one for
better
his
be.
30th, and then somebody gave us a surprise anniversary party. And that's
Okay.
when Kevin and I sort of came to an agreement that we would never do that to each other ever again because I hate it.
I had no one. I kind of secretly want a surprise birthday party, but I'm always expecting it.
Oh, really?
But it's never going to happen.
No.
It's never going to happen. I remember we had one for my uncle when he turned 60, and the poor guy had we rented out. My aunt rented out the boat that went around New Haven Harbor, and my poor uncle had to. He thought he was going there to pick up my aunt whose car broke down, and he was in his sweatpants.
Oh.
So he had to sit around in his sweatpants the whole time, and he was completely fooled, and it was a great time around New Haven Harbor.
Kevin was barefoot at his party.
Yeah. So that does happen. So do people really like surprise
I don't.
birthday parties?
Especially chicks. Because, I
Oh my
wanted to
God,
have my
right.
hair did.
Oh,
and-
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd spilled wine on my shirt.
That sounds
So
like
then it
me.
was like surprise.
That's my.
So I had my backup outfit. It was not. I wasn't happy. What I just read that I thought was pretty funny is that you're basically protected. So even if the IRS, this just seems unheard of to me, the IRS goes, oh, we screwed that one up. You're not. They don't hold you liable for it. They gave you a PLR saying this is acceptable.
Well, you're gonna be on the hook for taxes, but the penalties.
Oh, you will.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, now I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
That's sort of
They'll
what I
say,
expected.
oh, well, we were wrong about that, but we won't penalize you overly.
Yep.
And I mean, it is an uphill battle, though, for them to undo their private letter ruling. It's really something. Who wants to? They're just going to say, you know what? Reviewing it, I look like it's close enough.
Yes.
Move on.
There's so much red tape they don't even want to deal with it.
Right, exactly, and they have their own case flow to get through. If you know something I tell people all the time, if you think you hate dealing with the IRS, how do you think IRS employees feel about it? That more of their day is dealt with compliance with regulations at the workplace. That is so hard for them to actually work on their assignments.
Yes.
I don't know what the percentage is of their time that they spend on, trainings and,
Oh my God.
they have to always design everything for sort of that lowest common denominator. Okay, so if you're going to go into the refrigerator, make sure you don't take something that doesn't belong to you. If you could just put the bathroom seat down, things that,
Oh man, I've got another sexual harassment class.
something a private business could just say, "Hey guys, don't do that anymore." And then the government has to have a training
Section
on this.
181,
And
code 2.
here's our compliance director.
Put your first and last name on your lunch. Please print it. Do not use cursive.
Everything's terrible. And then the IRS union, there's the Treasury union. there's a whole other layer of people who, here's a story. I never told you this one. This is interesting. Just to understand, to give people on how the IRS works. Mm-hmm. There's a revenue officer I like, and he's sort of a straight shooter, and he's sort of from maybe the older school, a little gruff. I liked him though, because I could deal with him, and we would just to the point. Let's cut the nonsense. Let's get down to the point, get to business. And he didn't take stuff personally. He really didn't. And he did rub taxpayers the wrong way though. He scared the crap out of them.
He wasn't a sexy lady.
He was not a sexy lady. And one day he sent a fax over to us for looking for information. In with that fax was a complaint, or it was a letter that he mistakenly put that went to the union. He was reprimanded by his manager, and his job was at stake.
Oh, no.
And I'm thinking to myself, this is the guy you think is a problem? I could tell you everyone else in that office who's the problem. This guy is not the problem. And it's the exact backwards. The people who are the better, more effective employees are the ones who get hammered and beaten down. It's about, it's about career preservation, and that's something you learn.
Yep.
And there's people who they're like, they do it their way, and like, yep, I know I'm never going to get promoted because I feel it's dishonest to do it their way. I'm just going to do it. I think it's unfair to go after a taxpayer who is clearly not liable. Mm-hmm. When someone manipulated it, I could see who did it. I'm not going to stick them with a tax bill. I'm not going to make their life hell for what? And that's not what their orders were. And that's like, okay, well, you're not a team player. So you're not going to get a promotion.
We need a kindler, gentler you.
Yeah. So those are the guys who get reprimanded. Unbelievable. I never told them I saw it.
Oh, that's nice of you.
I know. I was like, that was
he
really
probably picked it up
embarrassing.
off the fax machine and was like, oh.
Yeah, right. Did I send it to those
But it's
guys?
like when you hit send on an email you don't want to and you never speak of it.
Yeah, right.
You never did it.
I think he might have retired by now.
Yeah.
So he made it.
We should have him on as a guest. This is what I love too about PLRs. So if you initiate a ruling request, it makes you reverse the tables on the IRS. You're suddenly on the offensive with the IRS. How often does that happen?
Yeah.
You're not going, oh my God, please stop.
And that's what's nice. It is, and there's times where you assess it, you say, okay, what's the battlefield like? Are you going downhill?
Mm-hmm.
Can you fight downhill with this PLR, or is it going to be uphill? That's something you try to decide. Your battlefield determines the outcome. If it's not your battlefield, get the hell out of there.
Right.
And sometimes it can be, it's like the facts are just really good in your way. You can get that pin.
Yep.
And you think you're pretty sure, like, okay, there's really only one way they can come out on this. There's really only one way. And so it really can be.
So if they give you an objection, can you fight it at that point and say, wait a second?
You would just go back on the facts.
Oh, you
would just say, oh, I think you're mistaken on the facts. You're really not going to get them. Their issue on the law is really going to be it. Mm-hmm. They're not. That's going to be a hard battle. Like, oh, I think you're not understanding what I'm saying here.
Mm-hmm. And yesterday I said real life examples, and you mentioned foreign hedging transactions or other low-ness commodities.
Yeah, the other day, what day was it? We were talking about some actual things at work to defer income internationally. There are some things at work. There's not just the magic wand that takes away. By the way, Julia also just gave me this today. This is something that just cracks me up. 75 best income tax strategy for 2012. And this is given out by, I think, a CPA. And, everything's legitimate. And for those, it's a 2-page document, and there's 75 things. Okay. And basically, there's so much information overload, and there's really only one thing in here that actually I would say, yeah, that's the one. You're given so much overload, and that if you're looking to lower your taxes with, if you're looking for these small little things, they're not going to do it. They're not going to make that big impact in your life. You need a big impact. And I think that's one of the problems that the tax industry has, is they give people too many options of things that aren't really going to do much for them, when there's one big thing they could do to change everything. And because it's like, here it is. It's like, it's right here. I'm like, yeah, he did put it in. Mm-hmm. It's number 72. He did put it in, or or if he bought this from a lot of times they belong to a service. He might have done this himself. Mm-hmm. But there it is. It's like 72 out of 75. That was the one that actually mattered. Everything else was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You got a little bit, but it didn't drastically change your life.
Right. So we're going to talk about that on Friday, too, with some of the marketing that is done.
We are working on that right
so
now.
I can't wait to see that list.
Right. Well, no, this guy's legit. I mean, he's not one of the we're going to go over some of the scammier ones. This is legitimate, but you're not telling people really what they can do. That they're not. This is not going to change anyone's life. They paid a little bit less in tax here, but they didn't get the big benefit of some of the massive things that do exist that aren't for everybody. And that's the thing. This is little stuff. You need something bigger.
Well, yeah, and to wrap that up, just because I know we've got a whole podcast coming up on it, like you said, if there was that many loopholes in the tax law, everybody would be not paying taxes.
Right. And then you have to think of what is the constituency for the average taxpayer. Nobody.
Yeah.
That you don't have one. So that's why you get these little, things so that some politicians, you say, and I provided middle-class tax relief. And it's a little bit of something.
Right.
It's a little bit, but it's not really going to make.
People like me aren't going to out IRS the IRS.
I think someday you will.
Someday
someday you will.
All right. So to wrap up, PLRs are private letter rulings.
Yep.
They can be worth it. I would say it's worth doing the homework.
Oh, I didn't give you the example.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh my God, we're going to close out.
Foreign hedging?
Foreign hedging transactions. So that's one where if you are involved in trading commodities, there's a way to do it so you can defer all your gains. And actually, that never made it on this guy's list. But that's kind of a little.
You could write it in pencil. 76.
I mean, there's always going to be something, and somebody could come up with something I wouldn't know either. I mean, that's just the way it is. I'm not claiming I'm the know-all of everything. You learn something new every day, and you have to have your mind open to learning that. But a foreign hedging transaction, you can have short-term gains and losses with trading commodities, defer all gains until you bring the money back. Pretty nice. Now, one question is what counts as a commodity?
Yes.
What if you're trading in, I don't know, sheepskins? Is that a commodity? I don't know. Could be. There's a market for it, but is it really a commodity? Is it and so that's something where you would say, well, hey, is this going to count? And then a perfect example is the IRS says, no, sheepskins. I don't know why I thought of that. Why not haggis or something? That would have been funny. I'm going to be trading in haggis.
Okay.
And they said, no, that's not really a commodity. Then you're like, all right, well, you know what? I don't think I'm going to buy and sell haggis. I'm going to stick with the known commodities, gold, silver, platinum, maybe, pork bellies, oil. Stick with the known commodities. Say, okay, I was going to trade in that, but I'll just stick with this instead.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it could be worth, even if you've got to pay a few thousand for that, so you don't end up with tens of thousands or millions of dollars in penalties.
Because there we're talking about deferring all of it as opposed to being taxed at your short-term rate of 39.6%. So massive swing there. So that might be something where you're looking for something. That's one of my favorite little tax savings strategies, but what does count as a commodity? Here's a way to find out.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So yes, PLRs are worth it, but obviously, like we just learned, it's probably worth hiring an attorney instead of going through the 252-page IRS.gov document to try to do that yourself. And if you tune in this Friday at 11 a.m. with Parental Advisory, we are going to be talking about some interesting marketing plans. Is that a nice way to say it?
That's the nicest way you can say it.
Slimy marketing plans is a not nice way to say it.
That's a not nice way.
Thanks for joining us live on Parental Advisory. Tune in on Friday live at 11 a.m. Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com and like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic.com, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.